Hi, my name's Erwin, and this is the Poetry Lighthouse podcast. In today's episode, I had the pleasure to interview the British poet, musician, and artist Atmos, who will talk about his poetry collection, Poetry for the Blind. It has so many things that I want to pick on this specific poem. It talks a lot about, as the title says, machines, and how technology is taking over, and our minds as well, how they are changing, and how our perspectives about our bodies and minds are also changing. I think it's really interesting, the fact that you chose this topic, because we are, technology is in a very fast, it's accelerating so quickly, and it's new technologies come here and there, especially when it comes to how to make humans better, but is it really making it better? And I think it's really interesting what you said about doing this. So you mentioned the assembled in a line of on a factory floor.
Yeah.
It almost feels like humans are becoming every more often kind of aligned with technology, some sort of as if we were born now with a chip integrated in our bodies. And true, you're right that, in saying that sometimes we just feel that with technology, we might alter our senses, as you said, to not experience pain. I think this line is brilliant. It also reminds me of our different, we talked earlier about the obsessions and addictions that numb our senses nowadays in order to not reflect and not think about or feel pain. I think it's really interesting because every so often there are more and more things and information out there, and the internet and Netflix and social media, that we end up numbed. We don't feel anything anymore. I think that notion is really, really interesting. And how skin turns into silicon as well, as if we were becoming ourselves the machines. So can you talk to us a little bit more about how you came up with the poem and what does it mean for you?
Okay. So there's a lot to unpack, I think, with this one. So, like you rightly said about like we're moving so fast with technology, and like we've already got robots and things like that are here now. They might not be what we think of as robots or like intelligent, artificial intelligence of that kind of level, but we're in a time where things are moving so quick, and there are some positive things that are coming out for technology, but what we fail to realize is that for everything that comes out, there are going to be positives and negatives to it. And it's like, are these developments worth the loss, or like worth these changes that are coming into place? I mean, we've already seen it before with people losing jobs because they've just been automated now. That's going to keep going. That's not, that kind of process isn't stopping. And it's kind of like, you look at supermarkets now, we've got self-checkout, things like that. And it's kind of like we're on a timeline, and I'm not sure where we're going, but it's like if we're not careful, we could be losing everything. And you quite rightly got it. You got it right when you said about, us becoming the machines, because that's kind of how I feel like we could be going. Either we get replaced by machines, or we kind of adapt and become the machines, because there are certain things that if they were integrated into us, our regular human bodies couldn't do. But what are we giving up to have that, So I hope that helps.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very clever poem and very interesting and relevant as well. And as well, I really like the fact that you really drilled in that, humans are losing their humanity, and a feeling of replacement, that the machines are replacing us, and also humanity is being replaced. Even with technologies that we are developing nowadays, like ChatGPT and stuff, that we are losing a lot of communication and a lot of very human abilities, and we lose touch with other people. Even though we now feel more connected through technology, it's actually making us more kind of isolated in a way. And I think this is really interesting. We are living in a way like machines, just programmed to do a specific task, go back home, do the same routine every single day, and
Yeah.
not having these interactions or these deep feelings. So in a way, it's pretty interesting to see it that way.
Yeah.
Because it looks like the future is very uncertain, and it might seem like these kind of dystopian movies that we see are in movies that it seem very scary, but at the same time, if you think about it, we're not that far from these
Yeah.
very scary things from happening. So yeah.
Just, just to kind of like add to what you were saying, I mean, if you took, I don't know, someone from, let's say, 100 years ago and showed them what we have now, they wouldn't believe you. They'd think like, I don't know, they wouldn't know what to say, because it would be so far advanced from what they were used to. And that's not going to be any different to us from the technology we've got now to 100 years from now. It's going to be unrecognizable, the kind of things we can do. Um, and I wanted just to follow on from what you said about communication as well. I don't go on Facebook very much. I try to sort of limit social media time where possible. But I saw a post that somebody shared that relates really well actually to what you said about communication. And I don't know if it's just a story or something that really happened, but there was a dialogue between, I think, a daughter and her father was still going to the bank to, exchange money or like cash checks and things like that. And she was trying to convince him to go online and say, well, you can do all this thing online now. And like she was listing all the benefits for doing that. And he basically went on to say, but when I do these things, there's no humans involved almost, in the process. And there's like a barrier between like human beings by doing these kind of things. And so it's like it kind of helped me as well. Like I thought, like, because I'm like a lot of people, I like convenience, and a lot of the online stuff gives us convenience. But then it made me think, actually, by doing all these things online, it's not a surprise that I feel isolated a lot of the time because we're doing it without even realizing it. If we go to supermarkets rather than order online or like go to the checkout, for example, there is that human touch in between. And it's like they might be there just to do their job and you might be there just to do your shopping, but there's some real connection, of some kind in that sort of short period. And by going to self checkouts and automated bank payments online and things like that, we really miss out on a lot of these interactions, and it makes us feel isolated because of it.
No, yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I can definitely feel more isolated every single day with all these new technologies. I remember before there was not automated machines at the supermarkets, and
Yeah,
there's always had to be an interaction. And
yeah,
it's really comforting when just to hear how you doing, how's your day? Just these little things, and it's just really nice to have this connection and asking, it's just nice. With the machine, it's just like you're literally by your own. Even if you're surrounded by so many people, you
mm,
are literally on your own, as though you were transparent, as if you were not there. It's
yeah,
just it's a bit sad, to be honest. And more now that people use these earpods all the time, it's just like
yeah,
you can't even talk to them because they won't listen to you, and
yeah,
they're in their own heads, in their own world,
mm,
and I feel it's a bit sad, the fact that now we have these little pods everywhere. It's just like it cuts communication, it cuts contact with humans, and all these new technologies are doing the same. And instead of making us sort of like better in terms of, and that's also linked to our mental health. Why
yeah.
is it that we increasingly feel more anxious, more depressed? Well, I think it all kind of adds up.
No, I definitely agree with you. I mean, I'm from a generation where we didn't have social media. I mean, I remember having a phone when I was a kid, but I didn't have a phone until I was maybe like around 10 years old. And it was an old Nokia. It was before smartphones were even a thing. But like generations now, growing up with these technologies is the norm. Like they don't know it any other way. And I think like people like me from my generation or people that are before that kind of time, it's kind of important to sort of remind people about why human connection is so important. Because like you said about the earphones, like to link to one of your earlier points about, numbing ourselves, it's like we're numbing ourselves from other human beings. We don't even want to like have a conversation with them anymore. And people wonder why they can't make new connections with people because without even realizing it, possibly they're just closing themselves off from everything around them. Um, and that's why I feel like with the whole topic of machines, that's what we lose. We lose feeling connected. We lose feeling like, we have other people around us because we give that up as a result of these technologies. And for a long time, I've always thought of social media, for example, as anti-social media. It does work well for some things. Like I have a friend in Australia, for example, that I just cannot see in person, unless I went over to visit. And it's great for those kind of instances, but for people that could be in your life every day or like, just like in a general basis, go and say hello to them, go to their house, sort of go and have a coffee with them or something. Don't just stick to being behind a screen because it's like fake. It just doesn't feel real. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then you start complaining, including me, of why we don't have so many friends. We see
Yeah.
our grandmothers and even my mother, they have so many friends that they've met through their entire life at university and outside of, the working life, and they always making friends. It's so easy for them to make friends. And
Yeah.
nowadays with new generations, including me, is like we don't tend to go up to people and talk to them. That's just a weird thing to do now.
Yeah. I relate.
So
I relate to that.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, no, I wish, I hope that, new generations also realize how important it is to take a step back from technology and just, enjoy connection and other people as well. How important it is to have this kind of collective um group of people that you can rely on, or you can talk about things, because also talking is so important for our mental health. Just having conversation with someone, it
Yeah.
gives a lot of relief and comprehension, and it's always needed. That's why always, we need more therapists nowadays, because we need to talk to people, because we don't have anyone to talk our problems with, no
Yeah.
one. And so more people is like, oh, I need therapy. And yes, it's because we don't have
Mhm.
anyone to talk these things through. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's interesting.
On that kind of line, I was just going to say, like, with the poem that I kind of read before, and machines as well, they kind of almost sort of have a sort of shared ground, because to me it's almost like reminded me of like we need to go back to our roots, the things that do really matter, and whilst technology is constantly going up, we don't have to sort of choose to go with it in some ways. Like I think for me personally, I used to be really into technology, and there's still some things I think are really cool, but I think if you sort of really look at the wider scheme of things, you know, I think a lot of people now are more so going to more like communal living, like going back to communes and things like this, kind of ditching the internet almost, which people would call you crazy for now, which is funny. And kind of going back to a sort of more, I don't know, a simple life, a simple way of living, cut out things that, we used to live without, and we can do it again if we want to. So, but yeah, it's a whole topic, that one.
No, yeah, absolutely. Which is why I am so passionate about literature and reading and books, because in a way it's a way to for me to, turn off the computer, turn off my devices, and
Yeah.
just really have a talk with the author, or like just with my
Yeah.
thoughts, to make me
Hmm.
reflect, because I really feel numbed after watching something on TV, or scrolling through social media. It really takes
Yeah.
a toll on you at the end of the day. So it's
Yeah.
actually really interesting to, and poetry as well is a way to, give us our own space to reflect and also
Yeah.
connect, like we're connecting right now because of
Exactly.
poetry. And so I think
Yeah.
it's wonderful. This community, the Poetry Lighthouse, it is, I've had it's such a pleasure to be able to meet new people randomly, and just to, share a really nice, share this love for poetry, and to
Yeah.
connect with people and talk to different people around the world. And it's so good to have this community. So as I said, it's really nice. All these types of arts that, connects us in a way. So that's really good. That's really good.
On that subject, yeah, I was just going to say, like, thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it. It's not often that these kind of opportunities are around, for one thing, and I really sort of believe in the, I guess, like the work ethic you guys have, and that you want to really help people. I think it's almost unheard of now. You know, a lot of people, if it doesn't pay or if it's like anything like that, they kind of don't want to know. So I think I just want to make a point of that. It's a really good thing. Um, and also to follow on what you said about the communication stuff. The other night I performed an open mic. So I haven't done many open mics, but this is the first one in Coventry, my hometown, that I did. And it kind of follows on to what you said about that human connection, you know, by just performing one poem and a short haiku after that, you know, it got me talking to new people. You know, I actually got offered a performance slot at an event that's coming up soon. And, you know, I wasn't going with that expectation. I go to share my work and hopefully connect with people and, you know, maybe sell some books if the right people are there. But by going to these things, you're inviting people into your world. You know, you're sort of, it is very vulnerable to do this, but it's also very generous as well to be able to share that part with other people, and then you get those connections that form because of that. So
Yeah, absolutely. Please keep doing what you're doing. It's great, and I do agree that, you know, for example, poetry, performances, or any type of performance, whatever it is, the type of art, uh, let
yeah,
it be poetry, literature in general, songs, music, performances. It's so
yeah,
nice because it always brings us together. So I think
you,
that's important, and thank you so much for doing that. That's great. I'm so glad that you're having all these experiences and opportunities because that's how things happen, you know. We meet people and they invite us to certain things, and
yeah.
we start getting acquainted with more people, and you know,
Mhm.
it's all part of communicating and
Yeah.
sharing. It's
And
really nice.
like community, I think, especially in the arts, is such a massive thing.
Yes.
Like when I was first starting out with probably like the music stuff, I was very much a bedroom player. I didn't really play much outside. But then when I went to things like university, you have to play with other people, you have to write with other people. And that's where the real magic happens, I feel. Because you're channeling your energy into, let's say, a song, they're bringing their thing into it, and you get 4 or 5 different people doing that. And then if you perform it live, you're like sharing that energy or like that orb of, you know, good vibes or whatever, and you're bringing that to the audience, and they connect with that. Like live music for me, for example, it's so much better than listening to records. Although I do like records too, but it's a different type of experience. You know, it feels more than just a listening experience because, you know, you've got the visuals that you're looking at of the people performing, but then you've also got this just a sense of community and belonging as well, which you can't really get by just listening at home. So yeah.
Oh, that was really beautiful. Thank you for saying that because it's true for any artist. I think it's very inspiring to hear that. So
Yeah,
thank.
definitely. You're welcome.
And if you would like to maybe go to the last poem.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure thing. So this last one is called Simulation. A figment of imagination or a coordinated assault set as a premise to lead indoctrinated minds into despair, follow the rules of a simulation, an overarching matrix, recording our reactions to coincidence or predetermined conditions, paired with programs designed to test our resolve. Indistinguishable sensory input, a deception shrouding everything in view, instructions hidden in code, persuading you to relinquish control. Are we fulfilling a higher purpose? Are we navigating through an artificial world? Is a civilization watching over us as we remain asleep in the illusory dream? Are we subjects to study, trapped in technological bondage, implanted with generated memories, preposterous though it may seem? Are we aware of being born here? Can we comprehend such a connection? How can we wake up from this slumber and lift this veil, this mask of fear? Thank you.
Yeah, that was fantastic. That's a great reading, and I really like this poem. I'm glad that we ended on this poem, which feels a bit more dystopian, a bit more kind of, I think, a bit deeper about our the way we think about the world, and it's really nice. It makes me feel like, you know, kind of existential questions. It makes me think about many things. Could you maybe I don't know, explain a little bit the main themes in this poem, and
Mhm.
maybe what they mean to you, or what you would like to the audience to maybe feel or take
Mhm.
out from this poem?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think for a lot of people that might be listening to this, or possibly you as well, when you first heard this, when we hear the term simulation, it, some people might think of the Matrix. That's one of the first things that comes to mind, I think. But I think the idea of being in a simulation is, it doesn't have to be as far-fetched as that. It doesn't have to be this kind of, being plugged into a system like physically and being, you know, kind of seeing something that's being programmed. Because if you look at the way we run as a society, I think in a lot of ways we're already in a simulation. Like you said earlier about us having our routines. We go to work, we come back, we sleep, we go to work, we come back, and we're in these cycles all the time. Um, so in some ways we're already living in a simulation. And the problem with that is that if we don't realize that we're doing these things, we can miss out on a lot of opportunities. We can miss out on connections with people. Um, and like leading on to mental health, I think one of the worst things for mental health is doing the same thing over and over again without things changing. And I learned this myself through previous jobs I had working in warehouses, for example. The boxes change, but the job doesn't. Um, and I really feel like, for me personally, doing the same repetitive tasks over and over again, it almost just makes you kind of shut off, or like, I don't know, you almost like just become like a machine. You're not really living anymore. Um, and the idea of this poem is kind of to sort of have a think about these things that might be in your own life, for the people that are listening or reading the book, and think, you know, could I do something different today? Could I take a different route to work, for example, is one that I hear quite a lot. Um, have I not seen people for a long time that I could go and see, rather than just doing the same thing every day for work and then getting 2 days off, that we might do something different those days. Yeah, it's a hard one to kind of to talk about because it's so vast. It could mean those kind of things that I mentioned, but then it could also mean more so things like the Matrix. Are we actually plugged into a system that we don't realize? And at the end of the day, the way we perceive the world, it's just a combination of our senses at the end of the day. And sometimes we forget that. What we deem to be real could not be real at all. The way different animals look at the world, that's their reality. But to us, that's not how we sort of interpret the world. Um, and because of that, it's important to question, what is real? What is our reality that we're living in? What do we want the reality to be? And kind of, can we take any steps to change towards that reality? Because we don't have to live by society's standards in many ways. I think there are some things that are good in society, but there are a lot of things that are kind of just accepted norms that are actually really harmful, like the addiction thing we were talking about earlier. Um, and I feel like this is a theme. This is kind of covered more in a different poem in the book called Truth, but it kind of leads into this. We're kept so busy in our lives that we don't, it's almost like we don't want to question things, or we're like, other people don't want us to question how things are going. I think my voice is going. Sorry about that. And we kind of lose our freedom by sort of just following these rules and not questioning things. And yeah, I guess the point I'm getting is like, question what is going on. Don't just accept everything as truth or as the norm. We can live life differently if we want to, but we've got to take that step. So.
Yeah, on that note, I think something that it's really interesting, a line that really struck me, and that while you were talking, it occurred to me is very linked to this idea, is
Yeah,
the idea of being trapped in a technological bondage, as you've written. I think that's very, very, very clever because it does seem as though we were in a simulation and that we were, kind of dominated almost by
mm.
technology.
Yeah,
Um, and also the system that we have such a very strict and busy routine, and we kind of run this rat race, as they call it.
yeah,
um, and it does seem as though we were um, seen as if we were these lab rats being studied. uh,
yeah,
so it really puts things into perspective. It makes you
yeah,
think like, oh, this makes me think like I'm being studied by scientists because I'm doing the same thing. So they think how my mental health is going down and how everything is, I'm losing communication. And it's as
mm,
though they have planned to build this technological world to see
yeah,
how humans will eventually develop over time.
yeah,
And I think that really it gets us thinking about, well, we got used to this technology, but are we inherently meant to use it all the time, or are we meant to do all these activities surrounded with technology? And it gets us, thinking, well, maybe not. And especially if we consider very old generations now when these things didn't even exist, you know,
yeah,
because for
completely.
people who are born right now, it's just normal. It's just daily life, right? It just feels normal. But
Yeah,
for us, it seems like, we're, it's scary to think that people will live in this technology as if it was normal to
yeah,
to have this type of interactions and to, so I think it's important to go back and to kind of reflect. And I think reflect, sorry.
yeah,
And I think these last questions in the end really, they feel really philosophical, but for a very good reason, in which it allows us to, after we kind of change of perspective throughout the poem,
yeah,
we now start to, okay, now here's the real questions. Now it's time for you to think, are we aware of being born here? Can we comprehend such a connection? You know, and it's just like waking up from the slumber.
yeah,
It's time for you to reflect about your life and about how you use your time. And
mhm,
because it's so precious, time is really important. And now it's the notion of time, it seems like a schedule that we have to follow all the time. So,
yeah.
and I think that's really important for us to understand. And the poem really, talks about every single one of these things, and that's really wonderful. So I think your intention, your aim is definitely achieved here.
Oh, that's good to hear then. Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say as well, I don't know if it's something that you've seen, but there's a film that I saw on Netflix quite a while ago now, and it relates to this quite well actually. You know, you said about like we being watched or like experimented on by scientists,
Yeah.
and it was about social media. Um, and all I really remember is like it follows the life of a family. I think there's like a couple of like parents. I think there's a daughter and a son, and the daughter and the son have both got smartphones, and it kind of bounces around between what's going on in their lives, and then there's other parts where there's like these group of, I don't know if you want to call them engineers or scientists, whatever really, and they've got all these screens that are in front of them, and they're monitoring, like they're sort of seeing how everyone's reacting to different things on social media, almost like they're programming and adjusting the algorithm like on a constant basis. And yeah, it kind of just linked to what you were saying earlier, really about we being watched, because at the end of the day, like I said, we could be in a simulation right now if we just look at how we use our phones. Myself included. I mean, sometimes I'm very guilty of spending too long on my phone, but the problem is it's so easy, and just being aware of that's a massive step towards kind of distancing ourselves away from these technologies.
Yes, absolutely. No, and actually, while I read your this poem and while you were reading it, it really felt like I was being watched, or I was being studied
Right.
by some scientist or something. And we're not really far from that, because even our smartphones and computers pick up on everything we say, and
Yeah,
it's kind of scary sometimes when there's something pops up on my phone and it's like, oh, I mentioned this, but I've never really researched it online, so it's a bit scary.
it
Uh,
is
yeah,
definitely. Well, that's the thing, people talk about us being like monitored or like new technologies coming in to do that. I think we're already there. I mean, you only have to look at things that happen with like Edward Norton and sorry, not Edward Norton. Is it Norton? Forget what his name is now. The guy that basically had to flee America because he exposed the NSA. I can't remember if it is Norton, his last name, but like things like that, they do happen.
yeah,
But we're kept so busy that we don't want to question these things, or like
yeah,
that's the kind of perspective that's pushed on us.
yeah.
The powers that be, if you like, just want us to kind of get on with the rat race or the
Yeah,
routine,
yeah,
so that we just let them do their thing.
yeah.
That's kind of how I see it in the grand scheme. So
No, yeah, absolutely. And as you said very well,
for a
it
while.
really seems like there's the simulation is actually already happening, and I think you phrased that very well, because it does feel like a simulation in a way sometimes,
Yeah,
especially for people, for older generations who actually saw the transition from not non very technological lives to a
yeah,
fully technological one.
yeah,
They could feel the shock, so it almost feels like a simulation. So
yeah.
yeah, that I really agree with that, and I think it was brilliant. And the title really makes that emphasis. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for reading your poems. It was very
Awesome.
insightful, and I think we got to talk about very important topics as well,
Yeah,
which
definitely.
is very amazing that, through a poem, we can just have a huge, great conversation and find very interesting things about the world and reflect. I found that amazing. So yeah.
That's great. It's great to hear. Oh yeah, no, thanks for having me. It's been really good. It's nice to like have this kind of conversation because I've never actually been on a podcast before. So this is the first time for me. And yeah, it's been interesting to see like how these things unfold. Been very interesting.
Thank you so much. You're always welcome to come back if you, whenever you want, really, or if you release something new, a new poetry collection, a new piece of art, you can always share it with us. We will be absolutely waiting for it. It's so great. And
No,
also for all the listeners who might want to follow you or who want to get a copy of your wonderful work, could you please let us know where we can find it?
sure. So the easiest way to find my paperback book, so it's available from my store, but the easiest way to get to that is to go to www.atmos.productions/links. So if you go to that link and you scroll down a little bit, all of my links for my book will be on there. So the paperback link will be there. All of the ebook links will be there as well. And there's a link to the audiobook as well. And also links to review it as well. And for anyone that wants to follow my creative work on socials, for example, my socials are also on this link as well. But just in case anybody wants the direct links or handles, so my Facebook is www.facebook.com/atmos.portfolio. My Instagram handle is atmos.portfolio. And my TikTok handle is Atmos Productions. So I hope that
Fantastic.
helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I will put them for sure in the description box, so it would be easier for them to click on them and directly go to your social medias and your your web page to get
Yeah.
the copy of the book. That's wonderful. Yeah, I will put all the information below. And thank you so much. It was a great talk. I really enjoyed it.
Thank
And yeah, thank you so much for sharing your poetry and your art with the world.
Thanks. It's been an honor. It's been a really, really good experience. I just wanted to add on as well. So as well as the book, anyone that buys a copy gets a free bookmark as well. While I've got enough of them. So yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. It was such a great space to talk about this wonderful pieces of yours.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for your time, Erwin.
Thank you for listening to the Poetry Lighthouse. If you liked this episode, don't forget to share and subscribe to our podcast. You can also visit our website, thepoetrylighthouse.com, where you can read and submit your works of poetry and short stories. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram to keep updated. This is the end of the episode. Thanks again, and see you next time.